Hello, guys, and hello, wonderful Maya. So, I have invited Maya today to speak about her journey into motherhood through the birth story that she's carrying. And I would like Maya to invite you to share what are the things that you've journeyed through, how it all began for you, and of course, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, but whoever is new today, the purpose um, of this conversation is not just to share the birth story, but to share conscious and present birth story and integrated birth story, and to share the experience that Maya went through with full presence and with full consciousness and with a very deep and beautiful approach. And we know that no birth story is ever the same. However, we also know that the importance of listening to realistic but also conscious birth stories is very empowering for those women who are just entering the labor. And whatever we have been going through since whatever we were born with, only watching and hearing birth stories that come from the movies, that come from some random people, it's not always helping so much to build the right mindset. So the entire purpose of this conversation is to help you, mama, to build a beautiful and trusting and empowering mindset for you. So this is why we're here. And Maya, thank you so much for stepping in and bringing your contribution towards empowering women.
Yeah, thank you. Because I do believe there are all kinds of information out there, but giving birth is one of the most natural things for us. And if we just allow ourselves to stay present with what's happening and not get fed the fear and all the businesses of birth also and all of that, and we stay present with our own birth, we can make more conscious choices, and also knowing and being informed that it is natural and that it can be supported. However, of course, birth is a precarious thing, as a beautiful thing it is. So it is important to be informed, but it's so important to be conscious, hear the stories, know that we need to trust ourselves. So I had the most birthing experience, amazing birth. I mean, my giving birth, and yes, birth into being a mother. But I do want to add before I go into that story that when it is your first time, you are very, and it is an intense, no one will ever tell you the excruciating pain of giving birth, which is a natural thing and which can be completely supported by ourselves knowing. But it's so important at that time because you are in another stage, you are in another conscious state, you are in another reality, that you support yourself with somebody that you can trust and that knows that they are taking you through the process, because at that time you just give yourself up. I mean, I had a beautiful doctor who was a doctor, but also she was the pioneer of water birthing in India, which is not very popular in India. So I got the beautiful water birth that I wanted. But at that point of time, when you are completely pushing through your last push for your baby to come out, and she was like, I think you need to have an episiotomy. And I was like, no, I don't want to have an episiotomy at that point of time. But because you are already in so much pain, it's on your last legs, you're like exhausted by that, you trust and you don't know and you give in. And you say, okay, because there were two doctors there, and this other said, you should trust your doctor, and I think you're going to tear, and over his head is very big, so you need to have an episiotomy. And so you just give in. So it's really important to remember what you had decided in the beginning, to trust it, and then have somebody there who is also as committed as you and on the same path to give you exactly what you want, you know. So to know that a little tearing is natural, of course, and to know that that's fine and it heals faster. Actually, it's better, because if you get an episiotomy, you're getting cut and then stitched, and it's not like necessarily the most healthy in that sense. So to really trust somebody that is taking you through that journey, and to have a good person with you is so important to know, you know. So I want to say that for everyone who is a new mother and who's going to give birth for the first time, and you need to find the right support, and then you need to trust that support, and that support needs to know exactly what you want, and that you will, you know, make sure that that happens as it happens.
Yeah, I just want to add that it is really truly important to trust, because even me as a doula, I tend to walk into birthing spaces, into hospitals where there is like a team of doctors, and oftentimes I talk to mamas before about it, that I'm not there to separate you and a doctor. I'm there to be a bridge, because guess what, the environment that you're giving birth with, you really should be trusting these people. Even, yes, okay, maybe you don't trust medicalized system, and you know that, you know, there are some glitches going on, but to begin with, you need to be able to create a positive experience between you and the doctor, and choose a doctor who you can really trust. And actually, what me, like my purpose as a doula, is doing is based on that trust. I encourage mama to ask the right questions during the process, to ask the doctor the right questions, because sometimes, yes, they can give you solutions that are technically correct, but they're not coming out of the right reasons, and it's really important to, you know, to question. So but the number one thing is, hey, you know, we're all in the same team, and let's get you through this journey in the most positive energy and state as possible.
Yes, and I guess something that is a very holistic in during the process and after the process also for the mother, you know. So to aid in the whole holistic process, not to, as a doctor, just get the baby out of you, say with a cesarean or whatever, or a episiotomy, push on, you know, but to support you through a journey even after, where your healing will be better and you can be more connected with your baby and, you know, with yourself and all of that. So I had the most amazing water birth.
Amazing.
And
it was in India, right?
It was in India, and I always knew that I wanted to have a water birth. And actually, in your last, in one of your conversations with a mother, I watched, and I think she said that she had watched a documentary film or some film about these women giving birth in the ocean with the babies. And I was like, I wonder if that's the movie called Birth into Being. Because it's Birth into Being. There are a couple of them, and this is one of the older one, where all these Russian women had started actually the water birthing, and they were giving birth in the, I forget which sea, and it was a
Black Sea,
and it was magical, and these babies were swimming with the dolphins, and it was just like that's what I want. And so ever since I kind of saw this, and it seemed so natural and beautiful, and I said, birth has to be like this, and the idea came in my head. And then, of course, I think the process of getting pregnant and how I got pregnant and all is also a miracle and amazing, and that's another story though, however. But my body had channeled and prepared myself for my son to arrive into this world. And that's just my story, and I believe that it does happen at the right times when it happens. I was just more sensitive to it and more aware to that. And since I'd seen this thing, I said I want to have a water birth and all of that. And suddenly my gynecologist ends up being the pioneer of water birthing in India. And so it worked out perfectly. And again, it was 12 o'clock midnight. I was to see my gynecologist the previous day, because I was already, 42 weeks or whatever, almost ready to bloody pop. And it was 12 o'clock in the night, and touch wood, I had a really easy pregnancy. At 12 o'clock in the night, I get a boom in my tummy.
So it all started with your waters breaking.
You know, I don't know if my water didn't break at that time, but I got a kick in my tummy, and I got up and I went to the pot, and I told my son's father, I said, call my gynecologist. Something's happening. I sat on the pot. I took the biggest dump of my life. And she was on the phone, and then when I stood up, we were talking. She said, what's happening? I said, I don't know, I got this kick. And she's like, okay, great, I guess your contractions are maybe starting, and I'll see you in the morning. I'm like, okay, but what was supposed to happen in between then? And as I was talking to her, I just got a trickle, and I said, oh, I think I just peed. She's like, no, I think your water burst. And because you always have an idea that water bursting is because you see again in the movies or whatever, you think there's going to be this explosion of water, but it really wasn't. It was just a little trickle. So I was like, I don't know. She's like, oh, I think you need to come in. And so from the time I hung up to the phone to the time, and my partner at the time didn't drive, I couldn't drive, and were over at a friend's, and I'm going to say this because it's just a funny story. We were over at a friend's house, and he just jokingly mentioned, hey, you know what, stay awake tonight, we might give you a call, we might need you to drive us to the hospital. And they were like, what, really? I was like, okay. I mean, and we had just moved back from a hotel close to the hospital because we thought my son was going to come on the 18th. And so we moved in closer because in Bombay, you know, the distances are so far, and to drive from one place to the other, we moved into a hotel close to the hospital, which was on the other side of town. And 18th came and went, and 19th came and went, and 21st came and went, and by then I was like, I'm tired of staying in a hotel. Can we please go back home? So we drive home. It's the 22nd, and we're like talking to a friend, and he says this, stay awake, and then at 12 o'clock in the night, boom, I get this. And so from the time I hang up the phone after talking to the doctor to we call our friend who doesn't pick up, and then finally picks up, it's an hour, and I'm like feeling the contractions, okay? And I'm like, wow, this is intense, okay, this is pretty strong, wow. And our friend finally arrives.
By the way, it was your first birth.
It was my first birth, and in 2 hours from the time I spoke to the doctor to get to the hospital, and I was like moaning in the back seat, and he was like, I've always wanted a woman moaning in my back seat, but not like this. And I was like, oh my God, by then it was like, oh my God. I was like, and then we get to the hospital, she pulls up a wheelchair, and I'm like, I got it, but no, boom, I sit down, because in 2 hours I was already, my contractions were like boom, 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 5 minutes apart.
Okay.
So it was a really quick birth. It was 5 minutes apart. We get to the hospital. She preps me to put me in the water. She puts me in the water. I'm 5 centimeters dilated. But as soon as I go into the water, you really want to have a water birth. I don't know how women lie down and give birth. I mean, how do you do that? Like, because the entire time I was like this on my feet. And then the water just eased all that pain and tightness and everything. It just like relaxed you to just be in some kind of comfort to take you, because it's 1,000 kilo weight, and I'm going to say this because no one prepares you, or tons coming down on your spine, right? And you need to trust that it's the process, you're going to be okay, and it's going to be fine. And for me, it was quick and fast, so it was very intense, very fast. So I don't know how you can take that kind of intensity, or women who've had like longer labors, maybe it's not so intense, so you can take it, but you need to trust that you can do it, because by then I was also, give me an epidural, but thank God my doctor, again, she trusted. She said, it's fine, you'll be okay, there's no point in it now, you've gone halfway, you're okay. You need someone to just constantly be there, supporting, assuring you that you can, coming back into yourself, and so it was so intense, and then the water really helped. And I got to the hospital.
So it was you and your midwife?
Me, the doctor, and my son's father.
Okay.
the
Okay,
three of us.
three of
And
you.
another doctor, actually. I don't know why
Okay.
he was there, but he's also a gynecologist,
Okay.
and maybe they worked together, or I don't know what it was, but he was also present.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
the one who actually said, "Oh, trust your doctor to get an episiotomy. You know, if she says it, she knows what she's doing." And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But what was so beautiful, so 12 o'clock he kicked, by 1:20, 1:30 I was in the hospital, I was in the bathtub by 2, and by 4 o'clock she was saying, "Okay, Maya, in India we have this saying 420, which is 420, and which is associated with somebody who's like a hoodlum, like somebody who like, you know, is like does some crime and things like that. He's a bit of a hoodlum, 420. I don't know where
Oh.
it comes from, but this number 420 has
420?
yeah, has some, like, I think other people use it in
You know,
that.
it's
in
like
that,
international time to smoke weed.
I wish I had something at that point of time. But she was like, we
But
don't
it is,
want
yeah.
you don't want a 420, we call it, you know, baby. So start pushing
Yeah.
harder.
Wow.
And you're ready now. You're fully
Yeah.
like dilated.
Did you
and
also feel that pushing sensation?
yeah, I felt like I could bear down. I felt like,
Okay.
oh my God, okay, this is really like,
Okay.
you know, I was like, I don't want to be constipated in my life ever again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like so you're pushing down,
Mm-hmm.
and at 4:15,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm pushing and I'm pushing, and she's like, you can push harder, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you telling me I can push harder?
Yeah,
I'm pushing
yeah.
as hard as I can.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what
yeah.
is that? Like, how?
Yeah.
Why do you push harder? What is that?
Yeah.
It's like you're doing everything you can do
Yeah.
to push.
Yeah.
And I push, and she's like, okay. And this little fellow is at 4:15, not 420, not 4:20, comes out of me, and he's comes out of me with his eyes open underwater. And
Wow.
as a mother, like, this is us as women, okay? I really feel us as women, this is what motherhood is. This is what it means to nurture. Because my first thought that went to my mind when I saw this little fellow out in the water, I'll never forget it, is that we are pushing as hard as we can. And we can't push anymore, but we're pushing as hard as we can. You can't do more. But when this little fellow comes out, I was like, for you, I could have pushed harder.
Oh.
And no way could you be pushing harder. But that was my first thought. And when he came out, I was like, oh my God, for you, I could have pushed harder. And, you know, like, that's your first thought, imagine, as a mother. And I think that's us as women and mother. We always feel we could be doing more, and when we can't, so we need to actually maybe remember that. But that's also the feeling of like, we can do everything for this. And that was the most beautiful birth of me in that moment, this realization of the intensity, the capability, and also how we feel like, oh my God, you know, this is something that you can do more of. And it was beautiful. And he came out, and he was all sweet and didn't really cry too much, and he was just like, you know, eyes open, and yeah.
But
Birth
yeah, go ahead.
into being. No, that's what I want to say. Birth into being. It was beautiful. Yeah.
You know, Maya, I'm actually quite curious because there is a very there is a very fine line here stretching from your doctor telling you that you can push harder, and you having this a little bit of a guilt kind of thought that, oh, I could have pushed harder for you.
That was at the end.
In
when
the
he
end,
came out.
yeah.
Yeah.
In the end.
Yeah.
But technically, in the reality, your body knows when to push, right? And sometimes it's nice to get a little, you know, encouragement. Also, I'm talking here from the side of someone who tells women to push, but I don't overdo it because I encourage them to trust. And sometimes, unless, you know, the baby's heart rate is like going up or down or something is happening, sometimes it's nice to encourage them to push more. But in general, it's good not to, because by not telling them to do that extra pushing, you're also encouraging them to trust and listen to their body. So, I mean, again, unless there is something with the baby, something with a medical condition, then it's fully reasonable to do that. But otherwise, yeah, I wonder if this was, you know, if there was a connection in there between that doctor is like, actually you can do it, and you
Interesting.
like the first moment thinking, oh, I could have done it. And mother's guilt trip is actually a big topic
Interesting. And I
in
know
the
I never
world.
even knew I probably had guilt
Yeah.
up until later, and I didn't see it in that moment as that. I just saw it in that moment as like, wow, the
Yeah.
feeling. That's so interesting though, that you're bringing that kind of together in an association, which is great. I'll definitely want to look back and see that, because
Yeah.
that would be very interesting for me to see. But I think that because it's your first birth, I guess it is important for you or the doctors and all to inform a woman when to push. Because, yeah, we need to trust our bodies, but in those moments, we don't know really what's happening or what's going on, also.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
we don't know what it means or
Yeah.
when it's, because you have a feeling.
Yeah.
But like, what are we to trust, also? So I think maybe there are
Yeah.
different ways or languages that a doctor can say it,
Exactly.
and do it instead of in a like, oh, push, come on, kind of like a
Yeah.
go cheerleader. Maybe in a more gentle, sensitive, like, this is what's happening. Maybe information, although you can't take anything in, forget it. You're just like, oh, the pain's
Yeah.
coming down. So I
Yeah.
don't know. But
Yeah.
maybe that is also something that needs to be done.
For sure, and the choice of words is everything. How you say it is everything. You can say the same thing in a very dominant and even kind of like abusing way, or you can say it in a way that woman figures it out by herself.
And not as maybe it's stress. Maybe it will just contribute to maybe less stress anyway that one's feeling at that point of time.
Yes, exactly.
But more in a easier, quiet way. Because I have friends who've just done it by themselves. Nobody around actually. Just her and her husband.
Free birthing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Music,
Yeah.
flowing with it, feeling, not even yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
But just like feeling it. Like for me at one point when I was like, and I'm somebody who, when the pain, like I can take it, but I was like, and I was like screaming because it helped me relax somewhere in my abdomen or things like that, to have that. It's like when you're working out and you're lifting heavy weight and you go, it was
Yeah.
like, or anything that was kind of helping me push down. And my partner at the time, my son's father, was telling me, no, don't scream, don't scream, don't scream. And you're like already confused and you're so sensitive taking things. And
Why
my
do you
doctor,
think he was doing
I
that?
know, because that's his whole Indian upbringing and thinking, it's not cool to scream or
Yeah.
yell or whatever,
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
who knows, his idea of, which was not supportive. And luckily my doctor at the time was saying, no, let her scream, it's okay, it's helping her.
Yeah.
So it's so important the environment you put yourself into, because so much is happening. Then one person's telling you this and another person's telling you
Yeah.
that. So yes, we need to build trust again within that of our own selves.
And that's why fathers should go to birth classes.
Yes, exactly, and support yourself in every which way for that moment, which is the most intense, exhilarating, and everything moment in there. But to know what you're getting yourselves into, to know what is going to happen, is definitely helps. Yeah. So yeah, that was like my story. Quick, fast, amazing. But I'm really definitely going to think about this whole idea of my thought, as you're saying right now, was like, oh my God, for that I could push. But I guess it's because someone's telling me push harder. And then when this comes out, I'm like, oh shit, I could have pushed harder.
Look, Maya, because
you couldn't be.
maybe you pushed the hardest you could.
Yeah.
And most likely that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, this is how we are.
How does she know that you could?
Yeah, this is how we are. We are constantly taking in information, input in every moment, and we don't know where they're coming from. Sometimes, most of the times, it's good to sit and reflect and know.
Exactly.
And hence it's really good to, again, I guess, support yourself and have these conversations before you give birth and say, this is the languaging, this is what I'm aware of, this is what might happen to you. So when as a mother, the doctor, this is what might happen to you, and when this is happening to you, how would you like me to respond to you? Maybe also, just this full conversation and knowledge, not just think, birth is whatever and we've just been doing this for so long this way and let's do it for so long this way. And it was wonderful and natural for all, maybe not for my grandmother, but women who were more in touch with their bodies and open and who had birthing. and but they just kind of did it because you
Yeah.
just had to do it,
Yeah.
and but we all have to do it. So let's have the conversations on how, where, what, supporting, and yeah, like, so it's a conscious choice. You can choose to have birth however you want, but don't let the fear of it, of having, and so you choose to have a cesarean, or the fear of anything make you. If that's a conscious choice you want to make, okay, but know where that's coming from.
Yes.
Know
Yes.
where that choice is coming from.
Yes.
What your real true intentions and easy in. And if you're somebody who wants to think about also the child in entering this world and how it is a more wholesome, holistic process in terms of connection, in terms of all of these things, what do you want for your child and birth, then birth affects all of this.
Yeah.
It affects all of this. So know all of that also. Yeah.
I always think about this. Uh, so there were bones found of, like, apparently the first woman, the oldest woman on Earth, and she's like several thousands years old. Her bones are in a British museum somewhere. Her name is Lucy. They call her Lucy. And I always think about her, how Lucy had no idea how many centimeters she's dilated. She had no idea when to push, when not. She just fully trusted, what her body was going through, and she trusted her senses and she trusted her intuition. And thank God that right now we do have, support and wisdom of other women who can gather around and they can transmit their knowledge to us. But also how careful we should be choosing the team around us, because we become so vulnerable, and some of the things that we hear during the birth, it can affect us for the rest of our life on a very unconscious level. Sometimes we don't even realize it. So it's and of course we cannot make everything perfect always, because we're all humans. We can make unconscious decisions, people around us, because that doctor, she probably absolutely did not mean anything bad, like she just
Yeah.
said it. But how it can remain, like
Yeah.
with the imprint that it can leave on us, it can be very, like, long term. And
Yeah. And I
yeah.
really wish I didn't have that episiotomy,
Yeah.
because it just takes so long to recover from it, and it's so painful, and our body heals naturally, and natural little tears and all are important. It's part of it, it's a process. So I mean, it's like,
Actually,
what is the need for that?
episiotomy is one of the not many surgeries that can be done without consent in medical world,
Oh,
because
okay.
woman is in such a unconscious state at that point. There's no point to ask and get her opinion, because she won't be able to respond adequately.
But you
And
don't
it's like
even know. So
you
if
don't
you're
really
more
know.
informed, like
Yeah.
I was informed, okay, a friend of mine told me you don't really need to. She had a baby without, the doctor wanted to give her. She said no, it was really not that much tearing, and because and it's fine. So, and I had read also a lot of all the books, and so I was like, okay, I don't need it. But in that moment, that's what I'm saying, in that moment when you're almost out of it and it's almost the end, uh, to rely on your trust, you need to build that and be so firm, but you can't, because you have a doctor who's saying it's almost done, and you're going to have to do this.
Of course you want to.
But
You
if
need
I
it
would
done.
have been more sure, and I would have said 100%, like if I'd really just researched a little more or thought of it a little more, maybe I would have been able to stay more firm, you know. And she was wonderful and everything was amazing. But maybe if I didn't have much choice anyway in India that much, but I would have stayed with a little more research, because in episiotomy sometimes they cut you way more than you need to be. I mean, I know with my mother and my mother's stories, you know, it was like way more and way unnecessary than it actually needs to be. And it's just that the doctors themselves are not really informed. They themselves are not really aware, and this is how they've been doing it for that long.
That's
and
the system.
Yeah, that's the system, and that's what they know.
Yeah.
You know, so that's also changing, and they're probably getting more informed, and sometimes maybe you would need to do it depending on the condition of your birth. But because for me everything already was happening so naturally, so normally, and all of that, you know, that little way I could have, but it is what it is, and it was wonderful anyway. You know, I'm just bringing that up as a subject and a topic to maybe, you know, research a little more on and really know for oneself what it would mean.
Yes.
Yeah, as a woman going into birth, what that would mean for you, you know. Yeah, something you want, don't want, what it really means.
Thank you, Maya. I think that it will really help other women to ask the right questions, make their own research, talk to their doctors. And also, as a doula, I always encourage my clients to speak specifically about episiotomy. By the way, for those who don't know, episiotomy is a cut, vaginal cut that doctors perform in the last stages when the baby's head is like right before coming out, and it's believed that it's done to prevent some kind of weird tearing, excessive tearing. But in the same time, when our body tears, it would tear along those lines and then along those nerves and the nerves are not being affected. So it tears in a smart way. Whereas when you do the cut, there is a possibility that you can cut some kind of nerve that can be affected, and it can be more complicated. The healing can be more complicated. And longer, yeah. So
and our body naturally heals. It heals. So with a natural tear, it heals. It heals faster, and it's okay. It's okay to have a little tear. This is part of being a woman. This is part of giving birth. I know many women who choose to have cesareans and not natural births because they don't want their vaginas to be, you know, out of shape, or all of these things that happen, or the fears or ideas of what will happen to your vagina, which is not true. You know,
not at all.
Not true.
No.
that might happen, like misshapen or too large or blah blah or whatever, and so you don't choose to go through that natural process, which is not true. It's a muscle. It's beautiful, and we heal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Maya, thank you so much for this wonderful story, for this interview, for your openness to share and encourage and empower other women to trust and to remember that they're strong, that they're empowered, and no one is going to give birth but them, but you, but us. We are the ones who are stepping into this experience, not our doctors, not our partners, not our doulas, not our midwives. We're the ones who are giving birth, and our body is fully capable to go through this in the most fantastic way, as long as we get the right support.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the most beautiful things ever.
Yes.
And to be fully present, to be fully connected, it is one of the most incredible journeys, in life.
Yeah, it's a big initiation, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, my dear. Thank you so much. Thank you, my dear. And thank you, everyone, for joining our video today.